meeting, it's really important to say that, of course, it is open to the public. However, some of the appendices of the report on item 12 on the agenda aren't available to the public or press because they contain exempt information that relates to financial and business affairs. Now, of course, if a member wishes to discuss the information in those appendices, we'll need to ask members of the public and the press to kindly leave for that part of the meeting, and we would also have to pause the webcast. But we'd make that clear if that was necessary at that particular point in the meeting. Now, as we said, the meeting is webcast and a recording will be available for people to view later through the Council's website. We've received no petitions, one remit question, one agenda-related question and 2 statements for members of the public for today's meeting. Can I also ask that anyone in the room please puts their mobile phone and other such equipment onto silent so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. And it's important also to say that there's no fire test that's planned today, but if there is a cause for an emergency evacuation, then please do follow the instructions of the Town Hall staff, and that assembly point is in Tudor Square. What I'm going to do firstly is I'm going to ask each committee member in turn to introduce themselves, and then I'll also ask council officers who are in a seated position to also introduce themselves. Throughout the course of the meeting, you'll also hear from other council officers who will be presenting papers, and I'd just ask that they introduce themselves when they're presenting a paper. So I'll start off. My name is Ben Miskell. I am a councillor for Park and Alberthorne in the city, and I am chair of this committee. I'll go to Councillor Gamble-Pugh.
My name is Craig Gamble-Pugh. I'm a councillor for East Ecclesfield Ward.
Good afternoon, I'm Janet Riddler, councillor for Stocksbridge and Upperdon.
Good afternoon, Councillor Ruth Milsom. I'm a councillor in Crooks and Crosspool Ward and a substitute member on this committee, subbing today for Councillor John Wright.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Councillor Alexi Diamond. I'm a councillor in Cleedless Valley Ward and Deputy Chair of this committee.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruth Mercereau, and I'm the councillor, one of the councillors for City Ward.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Richard Shaw, one of the Lib Dem councillors for Beechcliff and Greenhall Ward.
Hello, I'm Councillor Tim Huggan. I'm councillor for Crooks and Crosspool Ward.
Councillor Ian Horner, councillor for Bayton Ward and Lib Dem Group spokes on this committee.
Thank you very much, Ian. I'll just turn to our officers in a seated position, and I'll start with Sean.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Sean McLean, Director of Regeneration and Development.
I'm Will Stewart. I'm Director of Investment, Climate Change and Planning.
I'm Robert Parkin, Assistant Director for Legal Services.
Good afternoon. I'm Amanda Clayton, Democratic Services.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So that therefore takes us to item number 1, which is apologies for absence, and I'll just turn to Amanda for some guidance on that.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor John Wright, and as Councillor Milsom said, she's attending as his substitute.
And that therefore takes us to item number 2, which is an opportunity for us to consider whether there's any need to exclude the public or the press. And as we said at the very head of the meeting, there is an item, appendices, as part of item 12 on the agenda that isn't available for the press or public, and that does contain exempt information related to financial and business affairs. Of course, if a member does wish to discuss that, then we would have to pause our webcast and ask members of the public and the press to leave the room, but we don't anticipate that that will be necessary. Colleagues, we'll therefore move on to item number 3, which is an opportunity to make a declaration of interest. Can I just ask Robert for some guidance on something? Just mindful of a question that Councillor Riddler asked me a short while ago. Councillor Riddler is one of the representatives, I think, of the council on the Stocksbridge Towns Fund board, and she's notified me about that. And we, of course, are considering a paper on that particular issue, I think item 8 on our agenda today. Just ask for your guidance as to whether Councillor Riddler should declare an interest.
Can I come back to you in a couple of moments on that? I'll certainly do it before the item, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, and apologies for putting you on the spot about that one. And Councillor Riddler, if that's okay with you, we'll deal with that later. Any other colleagues who wish to make a declaration of interest? And I can see Councillor Mersrow.
I'd like to declare that I'm a member of Cycle Sheffield, and I understand that they previously submitted a statement relating to the A625 item on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mersrow. And if we're doing that, I'm more than happy to say that I'm also a member of Cycle Sheffield as well. Councillor Richard Shaw.
Thank you. I'm not really a member of Cycle Sheffield. I'm on the one of their Facebook groups, but I'm not a signed-up member or anything, if that counts.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Shaw. I guess part of that wider community of people, so thank you. Any other colleagues who wish to make a declaration? I don't see any of the colleagues who do wish to make those declarations, so we'll certainly note that formally in the minutes, colleagues. That takes us to item number 4, which is an opportunity for us to consider the minutes of the previous meeting. I'm going to ask members of the committee whether they're content with approving those as a true and accurate record. Now, the meeting was held on the 12th of December, and in your agenda pack, for those people who may be following at home, they're page number 11 to 25. Colleagues, if you're content with approving those minutes, then can I ask you to nod and indicate and show me that you're happy? Any dissent? I don't see any colleague wishing to dissent. I can see lots of nods, so therefore that item passing, approving the minutes, item number 4 has been approved. Item number 5 is an opportunity to receive public questions and petitions. It's a really important part of our agenda. It is one part of our engagement with residents of this city, but of course our engagement with residents of the city does not stop there as a committee. There's a maximum of 30 minutes for this item of business. Now, there have been no petitions have been received on this particular occasion. We have, however, had one remit question which has been received, and the questioner has received a written response which has been circulated to members, and for those people who might be following from home, has also been published on the council's website. Mr. Tim Slack has a supplementary question, but as I understand it, Mr. Slack isn't in the room today. Oh, Mr. Slack is in the room today. Apologies, Mr. Slack. So therefore, Mr. Slack, if you're content to do so, you're more than welcome to come up to the microphone just down here. Okay. Apologies. So Mr. Slack, if you're happy to come up to the microphone just over there, and when you're ready to do so, if you just press the button, and the committee will look forward to hearing a supplementary question.
Hello. Okay, yeah, so my question is, the written response notes that while Osborne Road does not currently meet the threshold for engineering interventions, speeds of up to 50 miles an hour have been recorded and a pedestrian injury collision has already occurred. It also confirms that the majority of drivers exceed the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, that compliance levels are typical of sign-only schemes. Given this, can the committee clarify what the preventative criteria, short of a killed or seriously injured collision, would justify physical intervention on a residential road serving a hospital, nurseries and schools? In addition, in response to the council's invitation to suggest an alternative survey location, would the officers be willing to undertake further monitoring at a midsection on Osborne Road, for example at lighting columns 18 or 19, where the road geometry encourages higher speeds and current data may underrepresent peak risk?
And thank you, Tim, and thanks very much for your follow-up question. I guess for people following at home, it's important to say that there was a question before this. There's a supplementary question. You can find that on the Council's website. Now, it does highlight some ongoing concerns that you understandably have. So thank you very much for submitting that follow-up question, which does highlight those ongoing concerns that you and no doubt other residents have regarding vehicle speed and pedestrian safety on Osborne Road. We do really appreciate the attention that you and residents have given to this, and we know, of course, that it is a road that serves the local community, destinations far and wide, including the hospital, local nurseries and nearby schools. I guess it's probably important also to say that under the Council's current local safety scheme prioritisation framework, the physical traffic calming measures are reserved for locations with the highest verified injury collision risk. Because only 2 or 3 schemes at this point can be delivered each year, sites are prioritised strictly on a worst first basis using killed or serious injury KSI collision data to ensure that that limited funding is directed to where it's the greatest proven risk of harm. This use of KSI-based assessment is a long-established process and is really essential to maintain the fairness and transparency in how schemes are selected right across the city. There are many other areas of the city that are seeing significantly higher collision rates, and under the framework we need to prioritise those first. Once we recognise that speeds are above the limit, including one motorist who was recorded at 50 miles per hour, which is not good at all, the average and the 85th percentile speeds remain consistent with other sign-only 20-mile-an-hour zones across Sheffield. And evidence from our city and places like Wales shows that these schemes achieve meaningful overall speed reductions, even where compliance is not always perfect. I think we also, as a committee and council, want to thank you for the suggestions that you made about a mid-section monitoring point near lighting columns 18 and 19. We do welcome that feedback, and as we noted in that original response to you and other residents, we'll take a look at getting a speed survey done at that particular location. And although Osborne Road does not currently meet that criteria for engineering interventions, we'll continue to monitor the situation, and if any other resources becomes available, the site will be reassessed. We're also working with the Mayoral Combined Authority to help bring forward additional road safety funding and hope to see an announcement on that in the coming months. So Tim, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the committee for coming today, for asking your original question, but also for coming today to ask that supplementary question. So thank you very much. Thank you. Our next opportunity to hear from members of the public is one agenda question that was received from David Bauer. David, if you're happy to do so, do you want to come to the microphone and just press the button when you're ready to speak?
This is about the A625 safety scheme. Prohibiting left turns in traffic will not truly diminish accidents. Instead, it will adversely affect local businesses, escalate pollution problems, and heighten danger on other roads. By restricting left turns from Ecclesall Road onto Salter Lane, the council is contradicting its own efforts to bolster local shopping and create significant obstacles for residents of Brincliffe, Hunter House Roads and nearby streets where trying to reach services such as the post office, bakers, pharmacists, hairdressers and supermarket. In a recent 12-hour study, over 400 vehicles take this turning. The average speed going round this corner is less than 5 miles per hour, which I feel does not contribute an accident black spot. There has been 2 recorded accidents involving medical intervention between 2010 and 2024. I suggest these serious accidents are more likely to have been caused by vehicles travelling much faster down Salter Lane or down Ecclesall Road South trying to beat the traffic lights. This restriction will not decrease that potential risk of accidents caused by these speeding traffic. No turning means traffic will either continue up Ecclesall Road South and make the turn onto Brincliffe Edge, a very narrow road, or to try to do a U-turn, which would be even more dangerous. Thank you.
Well, David, thank you very much for your question today. And of course, colleagues will be discussing this and that wider road safety scheme on the A625 as part of items later down in the agenda. We're also going to hear some statements from members of the community about it shortly as well. And it relates to that item that's coming up on the agenda. Now, the A625 collision reduction scheme has been allocated funding, as you'll know, by the Department of Transport, using something called the IRAP International Road Assessment Programme. And this is a piece of software which considers a number of factors, including traffic volumes, the composition, and the route geometry to quantify the risk of a collision. It doesn't simply use a site collision history, and you're right to highlight that the site of the crossing on Salter Lane doesn't have a collision history itself. The proposed introduction of a no left turn restriction into Salter Lane for vehicles travelling along Ecclesall Road away from Hunters Bar is to allow for the proposed pedestrian crossing to be placed where people want to cross. If it was set further back into Salter Lane, there's a strong possibility that people would simply not use it and continue to cross where they do now, which would be much less safe. The proposed location also reduces the impact of the new crossing on traffic flows, which we're particularly mindful of, and particularly for bus services on Ecclesall Road and Ecclesall Road South, which is particularly important to all of us in the city as we prepare for bus franchising in 2027. To retain the left turn would mean adding another stage to the traffic signals, which would reduce the time available for traffic on Ecclesall Road to pass through the junction and increase delays. The benefit of the new crossing is perceived to outweigh the disbenefit of the loss of a left turn used by a relatively small number of vehicles. Now, the City Council wants to maintain vibrant local shopping centres, including Banner Cross, and we know through a long established evidence base that people-friendly streets are also prosperous streets. There'll be some car journeys to and from Banner Cross that will take slightly longer, but we will look to undertake some before and after monitoring of the effect of that change on the local road network to understand if any further mitigation is required. So thank you very much for bringing your question here today, David. The committee very much appreciates it and will certainly be mindful of the comments that you have made as part of our discussion when we are deliberating the particular item later. Our next opportunity to hear from members of the public is about statements. And we have two different statements. One from Jenny Clark from Sheffield Southwest Living Streets, and one from Viv Lockwood from Banner Cross Neighbourhood Group. And I just wonder, Jenny and Viv, obviously not sat at a microphone at the moment, whether you both be content to come and sit at the desk here, and we'll perhaps take Jenny's contribution first and Viv's second, if you are happy to do that. Thank you very much, Jenny, and we'll look forward to hearing Viv shortly. Jenny, when you're comfortable to do so, just press the button. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is about the A625 Safer Road Scheme as well. So in March 2024, this committee committed to Vision Zero. That's no death on our roads is acceptable. Today at Hunters Bar, we ask you to keep that promise. Vision Zero is built on one truth: people make mistakes. Yet our roads demand perfection. They expect 5-year-olds to never stumble or push each other near a road. On Junction Road, a mother we spoke to recently wrenched her children out from a car's path. They were crossing on a green man. But the double-lane design invited a driver to overtake. That driver made a mistake, but the road design permitted it. Sheffield children are 3 times more likely to be killed or seriously injured than children in London. Why are Sheffield children worth less? The risk for pedestrians peaks for 11 to 15-year-olds just as they gain independence. And this fear fuels gridlock. When parents are too scared to let their children walk or cycle, they drive, generating 25% of peak morning traffic, trapping ambulances in the school run. So we support the scheme. We say yes to the lane narrowing, yes to the 20-mile-per-hour zones and speed cameras, and we must go further. The A65 is high risk. You have the funding and the mandate with Vision Zero. Please don't water down the safety for traffic flow. A child's life outweighs a few seconds of commute. So please, narrow the lanes, slow the speeds, and protect our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny, for speaking so eloquently on behalf of the Sheffield Southwest Living Streets Group. I'm just going to invite Liv Lockwood on behalf of the Bannercross Neighbourhood Group to come to the microphone and to address the meeting. Viv, when you're comfortable to do so, if you just press the button. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you, Chair. In the 10 years from 2015 to 2024, there were 7 recorded accidents requiring medical intervention at the Brockbank entrance to the Hunters Bar roundabout. Of these, 6 were in the hours of darkness. At the Junction Road entrance, there were 3 such accidents, all of them in the darkness hours, referencing Crossmap. At the Brockbank Junction, 4 of these 7 accidents were on days when it was raining or snowing, all of them in darkness. In total, on 8 of the days when accidents occurred on the roundabout, it was raining or snowing, thereby reducing road surface adhesion. Clearly, visibility in the dark, especially in poor weather, is a major contributory factor to accidents. Cycle lights simply cannot be distinguished amongst car headlights, especially when it's raining, and some cyclists' apparel reduces their visibility even further. The conclusion is obvious. The lighting at the roundabout needs vastly to be improved, particularly at the busiest times, to something approaching daylight, and the road surface attended to make it less slippery in the wet. Remediation lies not in making physical changes to the roundabout's geography, nor to its traffic flow, but in following the evidence presented by the actual data. Thank you.
Thank you, Viv, and thank you very much for speaking so passionately on behalf of the Bannercross Neighbourhood Group. Both Jenny and Viv, colleagues have agreed that we'll not respond to your statement at the moment, but what we'll do is we will respond as part of our discussions and deliberations in the item where we do consider the A625 Safer Roads scheme later on in the agenda. But we do thank you very much for coming today to present your statement. So thank you very much to everyone who has submitted a question, whether that be a supplementary question, whether that be an agenda-related question, or whether that be a statement. We do appreciate it as a committee. Colleagues, that then moves us on to item 6, which is an opportunity to receive any member questions. I'll just turn to Amanda. Have we received any, Amanda?
No, we have none, Chair.
Thank you very much for confirming that. Now, before I do move on to the next part of our meeting's agenda, can I ask members if they're content to reorder the items on the agenda to acknowledge the fact that there are members of the public here with an interest in item 9, which is the A625 Safer Road Scheme that we just heard representations being made on, and also officers involved in item 10 who have another commitment in which they have to honour. So therefore I'd propose to bring both item 9 and item 10 up the agenda if colleagues are content with that. Thank you very much. That therefore would move us into the formal decisions of our meeting. But of course, it's probably important to say that for each of the substantive items on our agenda today, please could I remind everyone of the process that we're going to be following. The officers are going to be invited to present the report to the committee. Members and the public will have had access to those reports in advance, and so of course we're going to assume that members have read the report, which they will have done, and they'll be presenting quite a high level summary. There'll then be an opportunity to ask questions for members of those officers who are presenting reports. Once all those questions have been asked and responses provided, we'll then move on to any discussion if it is needed. Because I'm mindful that some contributions don't necessarily need answers, and members may wish to make statements on particular items, which is absolutely fine. Now that'll enable us to be able to conduct the business of the meeting really smoothly, and I'd like to thank you all in advance for your cooperation. So that therefore takes us to the next item on our agenda today. Now that is the original item 9 in your agenda pack. It's the A625 Safer Roads scheme. It's on page 63 of your agenda pack. And the presenting officers are going to be David and Susie. David and Susie, thank you very much for putting this together and the work that you have done to get us up to this point. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I can't take much of the credit. It's really the report author is Susie, and I really thank her for input into that. So I'll just give you a really brief introduction. So the report considers the objections to the proposed traffic regulation order and speed limit orders associated with the A625 Safer Road scheme. So just going forward, I'll just say I'll use the abbreviation TRO for traffic regulation order and SLO for speed limit order. However, there were a number of other comments received during the TRO and SLO consultation that weren't directly related to the consultation, but we thought it prudent to include an update in the report on Hunters Bar roundabouts. It's clear from questions and statements to this committee that there isn't currently a consensus on the way forward at the roundabout. The overall scheme is being funded through 1.4 million of Safer Roads funding coming directly from the Department for Transport, with an allocation based on an assessment tool that has been used nationally. There's limited scope to change the interventions put forward in the bid, which aims to reduce the number of severity and fatal and serious injury collisions. Appendix A shows the interventions proposed, which include new crossings and revised speed limits, including a camera-enforced 20-mile-an-hour limit along Ecclesall Road between Pear Street and Hunters Bar roundabout. However, initial consultation in late 2024 led to the removal of the proposal to change access at Millhouses Lane. Other options were considered as set out in 4.22, but concept design work led to the conclusion they couldn't be delivered within the funding available. We did still get comments on the Millhouses junction intervention, though, as part of the TRO-SLO consultation, even though it has already been removed from this phase of the scheme. So the main TRO and SLO was advertised in October 2025 and included sending letters out to over 14,000 properties. The 20-mile-an-hour SLO was supported on a 2-to-1 basis, so there was twice as many people supported it than objected to it. And the 40-mile-an-hour move into 30-mile-an-hours was supported on a 5-to-1 basis, so more significantly still. There were objections, and key themes in terms of support and objections included that the fact that the safety benefits were widely acknowledged. There was additional requests for enforcement measures, but there was also a need of questioning why there was a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on Ecclesall Road when congestion on the roads limits speeds at certain times of the day anyway. And I think that's the important point. It's quite a lot of the collision history on Ecclesall Road is in the evenings, some of which is included or linked to the nighttime economy. Objections to the TRO, which is the primary purpose of this report, primarily covered the proposal to ban the left turn into Salter Lane, which was designed to enable a new pedestrian crossing site, as you mentioned earlier, Chair, in the response to one of the questions. Surveys have shown that around 800 people are crossing in this area, and when the TRO showed that we had 115 objections, mainly from the Greystones area. Surveys do show that around 480 vehicles a day currently use this turn, with around 80 in the morning peak hour. We are keen to maintain access to Bannercross Centre, and there may well be some increase in terms of queuing at Hunters Bar during peak periods, particularly in the AM peak. But we did also do an assessment of the junction at Cowlishaw Road and Salter Lane, and it is expected to cope with any additional movements that move through that particular junction. We will also look at monitoring additional vehicle movements on local roads in Greystones too. In terms of Hunters Bar Roundabout, we're keen not to delay the delivery of the benefits of the rest of the scheme. So the current scheme option that we're proposing excludes interventions at Hunters Bar Roundabout. However, we'll continue to review options at this location and can work with TRC to look at prioritisation with any future local safety scheme programme, as the roundabout does fall within the top 15 sites prioritised through our Vision Zero approach. I therefore propose that the recommendations are considered and approved, but happy to take any questions and comments.
Thank you very much, David, for taking us through this, but also for briefing members of the committee beforehand as well throughout the process. Colleagues, do I see anyone indicating wishing to ask a question? And of course, after that, we'll just give members an opportunity to make any additional points that don't need specific questions. Let's go for Councillor Diamond first, and then Councillor Mersero. Councillor Diamond.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to Susie and David for the report. I appreciate that we've had quite a lot of discussions about this in knowledge briefings. First of all, I just wanted to highlight on page 72, 4.20, which is regarding the proposed 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. There are only 11 formal objections to the proposal to extend it to Worlowdale Road, is that correct? Well, and quite a lot of support for 30-mile-an-hour to continue to this location. I'm just wondering, because we've discussed this and sort of said that road conditions there and the DFT guidance would not have supported it to continue to Worlowdale Road without further interventions that were out of scope for the budget. But what sort of budget increase would you anticipate in order to put some measures in there if we were?
Do you mind if this particular point in the meeting, I wonder whether I might just go and get 2 or 3 contributions, and we might just come back if that's okay. David and Susie, are you okay just to create a bit of a running list of member questions? I'll just go to, I think,
Right.
Oh, sorry, apologies. You've got multiple questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That therefore cancels my plan. Let's just go to the question that you've just given.
I could just do my. I've only got 3 questions.
Let's just pause a second, because I think David and Susie are just conferring with each other about it. We'll just give them a second.
I think in terms of the honest answer to that question, we'd have to take it away, work through some of the detail, and come back to you. I don't want to make up a figure and give committee the wrong impression.
Okay, thank you. It was also like referenced that we use the Department for Transport circular of from 2013. Does that include the revision from 2024? Was that used in the guidance to make the decision?
We would use the latest DFT guidance. That's more likely that I put the wrong year in when referencing it.
Yeah, things have moved on quite a bit since 2013. And then the other thing I wanted to ask about was regarding the Rocco Bank and Hunters Bar roundabout, where there have been 8 collisions resulting in injuries, 3 of them serious, in the last 4 years. I just wanted to confirm that will be considering all the options for interventions, and so that members will have the opportunity to assess them and support the intervention which will reduce the risk of collisions the most. And just, when can we expect these options to be presented for consideration by the committee?
So yeah, that's certainly something that we're committed to look at in terms of continuing work in that particular location. I'll have to come back to you in terms of the timescales, but again, that's something very much that we can work with committee in terms of prioritisation of the local safety scheme programme, because as you know, it's one of committee's duties to consider the programme entry nature of schemes within the programme. So it's very much within this committee's remit to determine which schemes are included in the programme moving forward. As I say, it is currently in the top 15 in terms of the approach to Vision Zero, and committee may well decide not to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we may choose to do 2, 3, 1310, depending on depending on other factors. So, so for example, included in that top 15, there's a number of those sites where we are already either planning or undertaking schemes. So that's certainly a conversation that we can have with committee once we consider a number of the other options that might be available to us at that junction.
Thank you. And Councillor Mesereau.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the report. I've got quite a few questions, so I'll just move down in terms of geography. So first of all, Hunters Bar Roundabout, Alexi's already asked about the timescale for that. I wondered if we're recording near-miss data on Hunters Bar Roundabout. I know that we've been doing this in other parts of the city. So, for example, using Vivacity or something similar, because I'm aware that there are a lot of near misses. People have reported feeling unsafe or near misses on bicycle and on foot there. There's a really high proportion. So I wondered if we are recording that, and if not, could we? Can I clarify, is it still proposed to narrow Junction Road to 1 lane? That is my understanding from the officer response at 4.22. And another question relating to Hunters Bar Roundabout. For cyclists turning from Eccleshall Road onto Sharravale Road, so going into town, the 2 lanes on the going out of town side are still really dangerous. Are there any plans in future to have a look at making that safer as well? So moving further along Eccleshall Road, what's happened to the no right turn from Rustlings Road? There was a proposal in the original plan to do that. I wondered on Salter Lane how the banning of the left turn would be enforced. And several respondents in the objections and the consultation responses asked for Brocco Bank and Junction Road to be 20 mile an hour as well. Can this be considered in future, given the proximity of the park and schools there? And I believe that's all my questions. I do have quite a lot of other statements to make, but I'll leave that until the next part of the meeting. Thank you.
I've done some frantic scriggling, so apologies, Councillor Mercer, if I miss any of the questions. Are we currently monitoring near misses in that location? No, no is the answer to that. Again, the scheme was prioritised using nationally available data, and it considers the likelihood of accidents as well, and it doesn't just consider the history of accidents along the corridor. Junction Road won't be narrowed, so I think it was a case of both sides or none is my understanding. So at this stage we're not moving forward with the narrowing of Junction Road, but that would be considered as part of the options that we were just talking about continuing to develop within Hunters Bar. So it's not never going to happen. It's not going to happen as part of this current scheme. I've written 2 lanes outbound, which I think was on the Eccleshall Road approach to Hunters Bar roundabout. So as part of a different scheme on Eccleshall Road, and I don't think this is going to answer your question, but hopefully it might tease out which bits I've missed. As part of a separate scheme on Eccleshall Road, where we were looking at trying to improve traffic flow, not least to help public transport operations along Eccleshall Road. We actually took out a bus lane on the outbound side, on the opposite side of the roundabout, to try and encourage a greater use of traffic of both lanes on the inbound side to Hunters Bar roundabout, on the basis that we found that the inside lane was actually underutilised, because people were always in the outside lane on the basis that they knew they would have to be in the outside lane on the outbound side of the roundabout. Are you now saying that there's a lot more people using the inside lane, which is making it more difficult for cyclists?
So what I've experienced myself is turning right on, so coming into town, approaching Hunters Bar roundabout and turning right as if I was to go down Sharravale Road. There's 2 lanes of traffic next to the Sheffield Maker shop on the corner, and the one nearest the shop darted out without properly taking heed, because there was somebody on the outer lane in front of them, so it meant that visibility was blocked. So they came shooting out without being aware that I was on there. So I'm really aware of how dangerous that is.
So what I'm hearing is that you're coming down the Junction Road side, but you're describing the situation that we're aware on the Brocco Bank side, where there's elements of visibility of some vehicles, some vehicles blocking other vehicles' views of cyclists. Is that right?
No, it's the bit on Ecclesall Road as you go out of town. So as you approach the roundabout, and if you were looking straight ahead, you'd continue going up Ecclesall Road. You've got a shop on the corner painted yellow, which is the Sheffield Makers. 2 lanes of traffic at that point. So if I was in one of those vehicles, I'd be on the lane on the right-hand side, and that person was blocking sight lines for the car nearest the Makers, and that meant that they shot out, and I was still on the roundabout, and they nearly knocked me off, and I'm sure that happens with other people.
So it sounds like that's some helpful intelligence then that we can capture as part of the ongoing work in terms of the further design options for Hunters Bar. So that's certainly something that we can take offline. In terms of the no right turn into Greystones Road, I don't recall that as being part of the original scheme, but that. Oh, sorry, I've written Greystones Road. Apologies.
Yeah, that wasn't included in the original scheme. I don't.
It's on the map.
It is, but I think it said this is junction remodelling as part of. I didn't know that it's part of the bus.
I think it was part of the southwest. It was part of the southwest corridor scheme. Yeah. So yeah, in terms of communications with local communities, there's obviously lots of different things going on different projects, but it's important that we share the information as one. Because local communities are obviously a lot less concerned about what's funding what. They're particularly interested in terms of what's happening within their community. You asked about how the banning of the left turn would be enforced. The curb lines of the junction Ecclesall Road onto Salter Lane will be significantly tightened. We asked the question of our design team: will it be impossible to get round? No, it won't be impossible to get round if somebody was determined to do it. In fact, I know I referenced a little piece of work that we did around understanding whether junctions in the area could cope with the change of traffic with that movement being banned, and we made an assumption that a small number of people would still make that left turn. So it's not impossible, but it'll be very difficult and designed to be very difficult. I think your last point again was about Brocker Bank being 20 mile an hour. I think the one change that we've got in this particular scheme is as you may be aware, our current policy on 20 mile an hour is that for sign only 20 mile an hours, we wouldn't ordinarily put those on classified roads or key distributor roads. Now, Ecclesall Road is obviously an A classified road, but the big change on this scheme is that it will be enforced using average speed cameras. So without additional infrastructure on Brocker Bank, no, it wouldn't be able to go to 20 mile an hour. And the enforcement cameras on Brocker Bank is currently outside the scope of the project that we're currently looking at moving forward with. I think a key part of taking a step back on Ecclesall Road and considering other options. Hunters Bar and considering other options is that we really want to try and maximise the benefits in terms of the funding that we've got available. In a reasonably quick time, because as each year goes by and costs increase, we will find that we will get less and less for our money.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Councillor Mersrow. For people who might be following from home, in your agenda pack you'll see on page 83, 84 and 85 there's a really comprehensive map of this particular scheme and different interventions, because I appreciate that colleagues in the room now are probably discussing different points on it, and it's probably quite hard, quite challenging to follow, but please do have a little look at the map. I think I've got Councillor Huggan, and then I think I have Councillor Shaw. Councillor Huggan.
Yeah, because it's obviously the big sticking point here is around the Brocker Bank roundabout, and as somebody who drives across, walks across it, cycles across all the time, one of the things is I can see where with the near misses and things, the big problem is when you're going up towards Ecclesall Road South, and it's 2 lanes, and people are trying to concentrate on a million different things at once there at that roundabout and keep their eyes open on how they're coming into it. And I'm not sure, obviously you've taken out the scheme, but one of the things that I would be looking at is to make sure it wasn't 2 lanes going into that pedestrian crossing, where the consideration has ever been given to making that a pedestrian and cycle crossing, that bring it to forwards so that it wouldn't be 2 lanes there that are going in, because it's people are trying to push round the roundabout. People are coming down from Junction Road. Thank goodness you're not going to narrow that down, because that's my bus route, one of my bus routes that would get screwed up with actually if that was narrowed down. But when you're coming out of that, it's the confusion and people who are cars that are trying to push around. They think they're overtaking somebody, and suddenly they realise that there's a junction there. It's a real problem. But have you given consideration to be a pedestrian and cycle crossing that would come across that bottom part, take the bottom part of Eccleston Road South, but also take out the 2 lanes that go into that bottom part of the junction, because I know you're remodelling Rustin's Road, whether that would be part of it all at the same time, because I think, with the confusion and actually maybe putting some box junction in on that roundabout to stop people from trying to cut in would also be a worth use of consideration down there. But the rest of the scheme, I understand about the left turn into Salter Lane. I understand why it needs to happen, and the rest of it I can't particularly see a problem with. But please don't narrow Junction Lane, because the buses would get totally stuck. They go across there, and I use the buses across there, the 10A, quite a bit. But but obviously the 10A also has other problems, because they talk about Osborne Road. I mean, I think it gets so stuck on Junction Road when it comes down Junction Road, Osborne Road, it's probably going often, I would guess, in excess of the speed limit that's there, shall I say.
Thank you very much. I'll just take Councillor Shaw, if that's okay, and then we'll come back for reflections. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David. Thank you, Susie, for the report. I welcome the report in the safety scheme, which has been, it's been on the work programme for several years at this point. So it's nice to see it, in front of us. I very much endorse the Vision Zero approach and strategy. All road deaths are preventable. Highways and vehicles are not, natural phenomena, and there's no such thing as acceptable losses. For the sake of convenience or saving a few seconds of journey time. So I welcome the scheme, kind of, broad, overall. Regarding the past collisions at Hunters Bar, so the committee's received public questions and statements that contain some discussion or speculation about causes of collisions. So have the contributing factors for these collisions actually been properly investigated and established? And if so, has those been factored into the proposals before us, or eventually when they come? And again, regarding the originally proposed narrowing of the Brockerbank junction, could you give us any examples of alternative measures that could be considered or currently being investigated, and how do these compare in terms of possible safety improvements versus the original proposals? Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got those 2 questions from Councillor Shaw and Councillor Hooker.
Apologies, we're just trying to sort out between us who's going to cover what. So I'm definitely going to cover Councillor Huggins in the first instance. I'm going to touch on Junction Road first, because I think what we're saying is that we're not ruling out any changes on Junction Road or Brockerbank at this stage. What we're saying is we're not moving forward with it at this stage, and it will be part of the ongoing review in terms of options available to us at Hunters Bar. I'm going to apologise for what I'm about to say in terms of answers to one of Councillor Shaw's questions. One of my favourite comments was, I think it was Chairman Mao's comments on the French Revolution, when he said it's just a little bit too early to say. in terms of the outcome. So I don't want to speculate. But one thing that will really be clear is that the scheme that we're moving forward with is one that provides really positive benefits in terms of casualty reduction, and what we can look at doing in terms of future briefing. On the back of Councillor Mercer and Councillor Diamond being, really keen to understand what might be possible at Ecclesthorpe, at Hunters Bar, is that we work that through with the with committee. In terms of the going back to Councillor Hugger's point about Hunters Bar, I've been working at the council on and off now for about 18 years. And this is at least the fourth time that we've tried to consider, options at Hunters Bar. The reason that nothing has been done to date is it is just very, very difficult. We've looked at consideration of taking elements of the parkland, which obviously, with a public space, being held in trust for the city isn't something we really want to, touch. We've looked at providing toucan crossings at all arms of the junctions, but again that requires adequate footway widths for shared use. We're now moving a little bit away from shared use, which would then require even more space on the footway to enable cycle routes to and from those crossings, because it's not that helpful if we've got pedestrian and cyclist crossings, but not actually an adequate or appropriate or good enough route to those crossings. So again, historically, we've had conversations with various landowners in that area about what we can and can't do in the roundabout. I do also remember, in terms of one of the first times that we looked at it, which was from when I first started working at the council in around about 2008, there was a significant BT cable within Hunters Bar roundabout itself, which at the time, accepting that technology has changed, was going to cost around about £1 million to move. And all we were looking at doing was moving the curb line in the roundabout to enable two clear lanes on the roundabout on the Brocker Bank side. So things very much have been considered in the past. Things will be considered again in the future, and it may well be a point where we have to say, if we're going to again revisiting going quite big on this one. The practical reality over the past 5 years is that we've been very fortunate through grants that have come through from the Department of Transport, that we've never had as much money to invest in our highway infrastructure than we have in the last 5 years, and it's looking positive that is likely to extend over the next 5 years too. So again, it's very much a conversation that we will need to have with TRC around the prioritisation of how we use that money going forward. And I am purely speculating here, but potentially doing something at Hunters Bar, this might be the time for us to make that decision. But there's been lots of different things over many years considered at this junction, but it is difficult, which is why we've not managed to progress to date. I think Councillor Shaw, you were asking about past collisions, weren't you?
Yeah, I can confirm we do carry out a thorough collision analysis of, well, there's been lots of analysis being carried out along the entire route, and we consider lots of different factors, looking at where the collisions happen and the time of day and time of night. As you know, there's been 8 cycle collisions on Hunters Bar roundabout, and the main issue is because the 2-lane entry is vehicles, because 2 cars can enter at the same time, and cars in the right-hand lane are obscuring the view for drivers in the left-hand lane. And we think there's an element of that where they're just glancing and the left-hand drivers are pulling out and they're colliding with cyclists that are already on the roundabout. And that's why the initial suggestion of reducing down the entry point would give drivers a clear vision to see cyclists on the roundabout. Obviously now we're going to go away and look at everything again and consider all the factors and see what other alternative options we can come up with, but we don't have those yet. That's further work that we need to do.
Just following on from that, I know a comment was made earlier on about lighting. I'm not a lighting engineer, but we did get in touch with our lighting team, and it's definitely worth us something exploring with them again. But from their perspective, the lighting is good enough in that location. It does meet national standards. But there is some dimming in that location overnight between midnight and 6 a.m. But I do notice in terms of the collision stats, I think we had there was one accident in that period. But yeah, something that we can explore with our lighting colleagues again. But they're clearly telling us that it is very much currently to standard.
Thank you very much. I see Councillor Milsom.
Thank you, Chair. Hello. I haven't been to all the knowledge briefings, but I have followed as an interested party and user of the roads in question, followed the consultation process. With regard to what Mr. Lockwood raised about the lighting that you were just talking about, I think the issue there that you're describing, Viv, is that lights are extremely bright nowadays on headlights. That's been acknowledged nationally, hasn't it? And you've got very bright white lights from headlights. You've got then, when it's wet conditions, you get a confusion of lights. Also, traffic lights have become a lot brighter, and the green lights on traffic lights can be almost blinding. So you've got glare from lights from all different sources, and then in the wet weather, that's a visual nightmare. And then picking out a cycle lamp in that, which is, almost always smaller than a headlight, I think there's your problem. So I'm not sure you can cure the problem of overly bright lights with more light, but I'm not an expert on that, but I think that's my perception of the problem there, that in dark, wet conditions, it just becomes like a visual mess. I don't know whether it's possible to dim those traffic lights, but they are exceptionally bright nowadays, the green lights. Anyway, that's that. Junction Road, just looking at the junction, which I use frequently, and that's a driver that made the error, Jenny. I think they've pulled out, so the pedestrian crossing is before the 2 lanes. So what they've done is a sin that you see a lot of people do actually, which is get impatient to get into that outside lane. So they pretend there's another lane before the pedestrian crossing, and so they're effectively moving into the middle of the road where there's not a second lane to overtake into a mythical second lane. And what's more, it's marked as a cycle lane as well in the middle. So you've got cars going bang into a cycle lane, crossing the middle middle line of the road, and then making that mistake that you witnessed. So that's the horror of that junction. People just behaving exceptionally badly. And I don't know whether it's possible to conceive putting some kind of barrier in the middle that would prevent people treating it as 2 lanes before it really is. If it was possible to, you could even do it without removing the second lane before the pedestrian crossing, just make it impossible for 2 vehicles to be side by side. So that's one thing I thought about when I was looking at that one. And then if you're in the mood to take feedback about things you've already done, Rustlings Road. So if you're coming out of town on Ecclesall Road from Hunters Bar and you're turning right onto Rustlings Road on that shallow angle, so there's now a box junction, a yellow cross-hatched box junction, and I find it now more dangerous than before, because if you're taking that right turn into Rustlings Road, I find this is a really big concern. So you sit in the filter lane to turn right, then somebody coming down the outside lane of Ecclesall Road South will kindly stop at the box junction and they wave you across. But there's another lane and there might be a bus that you can't see, there might be a taxi that you can't see, or worse still, there might be a cyclist coming down there that's completely hidden by the car. So this kind of person stopped, you cross into Rustlings Road, and you've got a collision because the person in the inside lane cannot see that someone's crossing. And they don't necessarily stop because their way across the box junction is clear. So I would appreciate someone having a really good look at that junction and see whether it really is as safe as it was thought it was going to be, because it worries me every time I take that junction now. Thank you.
So just on Junction Road, yeah, again, it's helpful intelligence in terms of feeding back to that piece of work that he's going to review, some of the different options at Hunters Bar. In terms of Rustlings Road, we do a road safety audit stage 3 once a scheme has been constructed. We also then do one 12 months later, which looks at collisions. So that's certainly something that I'll take away to the project team for that particular project. I'm just checking from your perspective. Do you think the layout has changed significantly in terms of that right turn though? Because I think
Because the box junction is telling people to stop.
Yes.
And not sit on the junction, not sit across.
Yes.
Turn. So you'll get one vehicle stopping.
Yes.
And then there's an inside lane that can't see that there's someone turning.
Okay, but they carry on through the box junction because they can, because they right. Okay, yeah, that's certainly something that we'll ask our colleagues to specifically look at through the road safety audit process.
Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Diamond, have you got a question, or is it part of the wider discussion that I know that Councillor Mersero was interested in? Okay, of course.
Yeah, thank you for allowing that, Chair. I just wanted a bit of clarification, mainly because for people tuning in, I think we've had this in the knowledge briefing, but it wouldn't be possible for the committee to take the decision to include narrowing the lanes at Hunters Bar roundabout, because we've allocated the full budget as at present.
So yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I guess the reminder is that the decision is actually related to the traffic regulation order, and there isn't a need for a traffic regulation order at Hunters Bar. It's just because there was a large amount of communications around Hunters Bar, we thought it helpful to bring it to the to committee's attention and say what we were doing, what we were going to do next. But yes, in terms of the actual answer to your question, it's not currently included within the within the financial allocations for this particular project. And if we're now talking about some quite significant changes, it has the potential to take us well above the allocation that we've currently got. So apologies from our side if we've maybe confused it a little bit by including the information about Hunters Bar. Even though it wasn't the main purpose of the report, which was around the traffic regulation order for other elements of the scheme that we do need approved in able to implement the infrastructure as part of the Safer Roads project.
Thank you very much. We'll very quickly just move on, unless Councillor Campbell-Pugh would like to ask a question, into the wider discussion of this item. We so appreciate that some colleagues wish simply to kind of make a statement effectively rather than necessarily ask a question. But Councillor Campbell-Pugh?
It is a question, Chair, but it's not a question to officers. I know we don't usually do this, but my question is to the two representatives of the community groups that have presented to us earlier. And I would just like you to indicate whether, I think I know the answer, but can you just clarify whether or not you're in support of the proposal as currently set out?
No,
You're not.
I don't think that let that decision, you can only turn at a very low speed anyway because of the acute angle. But I don't think that actually contributes to the safety issue, or I'm sure there may be other things. Therefore,
Thank you very much. Councillor Campbell-Pugh, quite clearly your efforts there to involve members of the public who are part of our meeting is to be very much welcomed. I guess I just caution because people who are following at home couldn't necessarily hear that contribution. And we've just heard from one member of the public, and for balance, we probably just need to hear someone else as well. Could you just summarise what you've just heard there for us, please?
That gentleman does not support this proposal.
Okay, and were you interested in getting a view from another resident as well, who's also in the room?
Yeah, with apologies, Chair, for throwing the meeting into chaos and mayhem. But yes, I would like to hear.
Okay, we also have Viv, who is raising his hand. This isn't customary that we kind of bring members of the public into this particular part of the meeting, and I guess my concern is that this is for us, it's for the committee to make the formal decision. I'm just going to ask Robert for a legal guidance on this, Robert, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, Chair, you're running the committee and we're not hearing anybody standing on a point of order. You may want to have that conversation. I think the point for officers would be, I suppose, the balanced officer-based professional report before you, and whether what we're hearing is able to be fully and professionally responded to. So it may be an indication. Obviously, Chair, the content of the recommendations and the professional advice is with officers and within the report.
Thank you very much for the clarification. I think for balance, Councillor Campbell-Pugh, I'll let you continue. I'm just mindful that it's quite clear that we've got a diversity of viewpoints here. I think we've perhaps got the two gentlemen who are likely to be against, I would imagine, and we've got one representation that's likely to be in favour, and therefore we will get balance, but we'll get two individuals who are against and one in favour, and we probably need to be mindful of that. Councillor Campbell-Pugh, I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you. You're chairing the meeting, Chair, but I would like to hear, in summary, whether your analysis is correct, that we've got another objection and someone in support.
I'm happy to continue with this, obviously mindful that those people following at home can't hear, but we'll just summarise for them. I'll just go to Viv. Thank you very much, Viv, and we'll just ask Jenny from Living Streets as well, Councillor Campbell-Pugh, if that's something that you'd like to do. Jenny. Robert, I'm just going to turn to you and then Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, obviously, just want to remind Chair, through you and the committee, the committee needs to make the decision on the basis, obviously, of the debate, but in the professional report presented, which provides transparency and centrality of the pertinent issues that the professional officers brought to the committee today. So, notwithstanding that commentary has been made and no doubt heard, that is the central point of reference and departure today, Chair.
Thank you very much for that clarity, Robert. It's very much appreciated. I'll just go to Councillor Campbell-Pugh because people following at home might not necessarily have been able to hear those contributions. Do you just want to summarise, Councillor Campbell-Pugh, and we'll just move on? Yeah,
thank you, Chair. It was really interesting to hear the confirmation that the gentleman that asked the question earlier and the Bannercross Neighbourhood Group have got some concerns, but Bannercross Neighbourhood Group broadly in support of a scheme, and Living Streets are supportive.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell-Pugh, and I think we all need to be very mindful of the statement that Robert just read out there about the content of the report having to be the consideration here. This is what we're considering. I think I did see another colleague who wished to indicate, Councillor Vidler, and then I will go to Councillor Measure. Councillor Vidler.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't want to revisit any of the things that have already been said. I think quite rightly we spent quite a lot of time on this because it is a complex situation with a lot of implications, and it's clear that a lot of work has gone into this from officers, and that the local community has been very involved in making known its feelings on this. I think that the thing that matters to me is that I think it's good that we're not rushing this, that we're not making a decision too early. I think it's good that it's going back for review, and whilst wanting things to keep moving, I think that it's right that we just sort of pause on this and allow more consideration, more reflection, and then proceed in whichever way is most beneficial for the safety of most vulnerable road users. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think I saw a short while ago, Councillor Mersrow, you wished to make a comment, didn't you? And colleagues, anyone who did want to make a comment that wasn't something that needed to be answered by officers is able to do so now. Councillor Mersrow.
Yeah, I have several comments on this, and thank you very much, David, for your answers, and thank you very much, Susie, for your report. I really welcome the measures that the report covers that will reduce deaths, serious injuries and collisions. These fatalities are preventable, and there are far too many of them on this stretch of road and in Sheffield in general. We've got to remember that the numbers killed and injured aren't just statistics, they represent real people whose lives are either cut short or changed forever. And there are many more people in their wider families and communities who are also impacted by this. It's really clear that these measures are necessary, and we mustn't compromise on road danger reduction. Any intervention that we decide on must robustly demonstrate that those most at risk will be prioritised. I'm aware that many children make the journey to schools on foot or by bike in this area, and they will be affected by these measures, especially at Hunters Bar, Junction Lane and Salter Lane. They weren't consulted on this, so we've got to ensure that their needs are considered. I looked at the statistics a while ago, and I noticed that on the stretch of the A625 from Moore Street to Wherledale Road, pedestrians account for half of those killed, and motorbike riders the other half. And of those seriously injured, pedestrians are 31% of the total, cyclists 31% of the total, despite only 8% of journeys being made by foot or by bike. So it's really clear that those being most seriously injured and killed are the people who are most at risk. It's also worth remembering that even a so-called slight injury or a near miss might be enough of a shock or a horror to deter somebody from walking or cycling that route again. People want to have the choice to walk, wheel and cycle, and we need to make this choice possible for them. I'd also like to point out that there isn't currently a safe route for people on bike to get into the city centre from southwest Sheffield. There's no safe crossing of Ecclesall Road South. There's no safe route onto Salter Lane. There's no way to link up parts of the safer cycle routes to and from town and the other neighbourhoods. And this is in an area of the city which has a really high propensity to cycle. And sorry, I'm just taking my time here because I've got quite a lot to say. I'm really pleased that the speed reductions are being recommended, but I would like to say that I would support these going further along Ecclesall Road as well, particularly from Hunters Bar up to Salter Lane, because there's a lot of hospitality and retail establishments along here. But in summary, I'm really supportive of these measures and would wish that they would go further. And I look forward to the options that will be delivered in due course about the Hunters Bar roundabout interventions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mersrow. Just very quickly, I'll go to Councillor Milson and then Councillor Diamond. Councillor Diamond.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just quickly wanted to reflect on sort of what just happened in the meeting, and I think that's probably a difficult precedent to set in terms of a lot of people probably would like to contribute and they can't come, including school children, who's obviously at school at this time, and they're the people that are going to be arguably the most impacted by some of the changes. But yeah, I'm really supportive of the scheme as a whole. The data is really clear that it's a very dangerous road, high numbers of people killed, serious injuries. And some of the reasons for that is because of unsafe speeds and infrastructure, which makes the danger worse. So I'm glad to see that we're addressing that. I would have liked some of it to have gone further. I appreciate the budget constraints, and I do support the approach of prioritising the most impactful measures. Things that I'd have liked to have seen gone further is the 20-mile limit up to Banner Cross, 30-mile limit up to Worledale Road. But I appreciate the reasons why that's not being taken forward at this time. And Hunters Bar Roundabout, again, I think it's disappointing that we haven't had the options this stage so we can move to implementation. But I'm pleased that we are going to consider all the options, and I hope we support the most impactful intervention, which is consistent with Vision Zero, which is no casualties on Sheffield roads. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, I think with your agreement, I'm going to move to a vote on this, but Councillor Milson, I'll just take your contribution because I don't want to be told off.
Thank you so much. I mean, just indulge me because I don't get to come to this committee very often. It's fun. Vision Zero, I just wanted to, I'm not going to ask a question because it would be way too long to answer today probably, but I'm just so curious about Vision Zero that so far I haven't heard any rhetoric around Vision Zero that talks about educating road users. It's all about preventing things from happening, and one of the best preventatives surely is education, and we've talked about that in the Social Care Committee this morning when we were talking about sexual and reproductive health, that it's not just about doling out remedies, it's about educating as well. And so just curious really what there is within Vision Zero, and I'd be really interested to have a conversation with those who know more about it to understand what's in there about educating. For example, how to get home safely when you come out of a bar at 1 o'clock in the morning so that you don't get into difficulties on Ecclesall Road, because I don't drive on that road after 10 o'clock at night on a Friday or Saturday, and there is a reason for that, and it's difficult. Also, I just wondered, one more thought popped into my head. I won't put it as a question, I'll just leave it out there, to say that that left turn onto from Ecclesall Road to Junction to Salter Lane, I beg your pardon, obviously is highly controversial. A huge number of objections against people in support. So, that makes me stop and think. I maybe once a year take that left turn myself. It's very convenient when you need to take that direction. And the things that people have raised about displacement onto the roads in Greystones or the other side on Brincliffe Road, that they're difficult roads. They're narrow and busy. So making them busier is not an easy thing to think about in the future. I just wonder whether, in the spirit of what Councillor Huggan and I experienced in Crooks, we had a trial system for measures that were brought in because nobody really knew how they were going to work. So the trial, the beauty of it was when we realised things didn't work, we could get rid of them. So why not a trial for that turn, since that would then allow the concerns that so many members of the public have raised to be considered over a period of time and see it play out in reality. And if the displacement is a big issue, then it's really easy to go back on it and not make it permanent. I don't know if that's an option, but it worked for us in Crooks, having a trial period.
Thank you, Councillor Milson. I just think it's probably a question for the committee to reflect on. I'd be mindful, of course, to the answer that I read out at the very head of the meeting to a resident. It was to Mr. Bauer, and at the very end of it, it said that we will look to undertake some before and after monitoring of the effects of change on the local road network to understand if any mitigation is required. So that's a commitment from the council to do that modelling. and to look as a result of that to see whether any further mitigation might well be required. So hopefully that's very much in the spirit of what you're talking about. I think the other thing for the committee to reflect on is certainly about education. You mentioned about road safety, education for those people who are drivers. That's something that we work with South Yorkshire Safer Roads Partnership on, which is currently getting more staff and more resource to do much more of that work. And it's really, really important. So many of our officers are now working much more effectively with South Yorkshire Safer Roads Partnership, where there'll be increased resource to be able to educate drivers on all of those issues that you're talking about, not just around kind of drink driving around Christmas, but throughout the year and as part of a regular programme of activity. We as a council have our own programme, and that's particularly about young drivers, and our officers lead that work, but we do rely on working with South Yorkshire's Safer Roads Partnership on the rest of it. Now, I will just finally just go to David, because I think he's just indicating that he would like to speak. Is that right, David, or have you just got your hand up? You're just resting your hand.
I was just going to, you've done quite a lot of what I was just going to say, Chair, if I'm honest. Just going back to Vision Zero, I'm more than happy to have separate conversations with Councillor Milson, but you're right, education, we're talking about engineering here. Education is a key part of Vision Zero, as is enforcement. So it's not just about the engineering scheme and enforcement scheme that we're looking at in front of us here.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Milsom. Colleagues, therefore, we are going to consider this particular item. So this is item 9, which is the A625 Safer Road scheme. So based upon the discussions that we've had, the content of the report that's been produced by officers, can I ask members if they are content with agreeing this, and whether any colleague wishes to indicate any dissent? Can I see colleagues nodding if they're happy, or perhaps sticking their hand up if they'd like to register dissent? I've seen no one indicating that they wish to dissent. I've seen lots of nods. Colleagues, therefore, we've approved the A625 Safer Road scheme item in the report. That's page 63 of the agenda pack, and those recommendations were outlined on page 65. Thank you very much, David, and thank you, Susie, for bringing that to us today. It did take us some time to deliberate, but I think it's important that we make the right decision when it comes to that, so thank you very much. Colleagues, we're then going to move to item number 10, which is the Herries Road pedestrian crossing scheme. Now, Alexandra Redman is going to be presenting this to us, I think, alongside David, and it's on page 221 of the agenda pack. Alex and David, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, I'm Alex Redman. I'm a senior transport planner and the client on the Herries Road pedestrian crossing scheme, which is the main reason for this report, is for the traffic regulation order to implement a total of 272 metres of double yellow lines on Herries Road to support the proposed two new pedestrian islands to be constructed. The Herries Road pedestrian crossing scheme is part of a wider annual pedestrian crossings programme. It's back from 22-23. The reason why this scheme has come to committee is from a road safety audit on the design of the pedestrian crossing scheme. The road safety audit raised that due to obstructive parking on the footway, it was going to block visibility for both pedestrians and oncoming vehicles, and it would be a danger to pedestrians if no parking restrictions were implemented alongside the pedestrian refuges to support them to enable clear visibility for drivers and pedestrians, not blocking the footway and keeping the tactile paving and any drop curves clear of obstruction. We've received 4 formal objections for properties that will be directly affected by the proposed parking restrictions. The main concerns were that they park on the existing grass verges, that parking on their own driveway currently, trying to get out of the driveways at busy times was causing issues, and that some of the objectors had family and dependents that have got blue badges, so they were saying that it was easier for them to park on the grass verge than it was on the driveways. Taking into consideration all of these objections, the houses that are situated that front the double yellow lines all have driveways and can hold multiple vehicles. The existing grass verges are currently damaged due to parked vehicles, and if vehicles are parking on the footway, it will not only block the new pedestrian islands, but also it's a hazard for pedestrians trying to walk on the footway with prams, wheelchairs and other mobility aids. So the recommendation in the report is to implement the 270 metres of double yellow lines as advertised in the traffic regulation order.
Thank you very much, Alex. Any questions from colleagues around the room? Councillor Mersrow.
Thank you very much for the report. Just a couple of questions. Are no parking on grass verge signs going to be put in as well? Because I'm aware that if there are double yellows, people with a blue badge can park on them, and that applies to the area next to the pavement as well. So would you need to install extra signs to say no grass verge parking? And the other question is, has extra resource been allocated with parking services to make sure that they can enforce that area? Because enforcement's always an issue. Thank you.
I'm happy to pick those up, and you're absolutely right. Resource is an issue, but what's been really encouraging is through the task and finish group, set up between TRC and waste and street scene. There's been one of the outcomes of that is that additional enforcement resources will be brought on board, including I understand in the evening, which is really positive news. The way that we tend to work with parking services is that we certainly inform them of the new restrictions and ask them certainly in the first few weeks of operation, to maybe look in those locations, a little bit more frequently. And they tend to be really quite responsive to that particular approach. In terms of your question about no waiting on footways, I am not a traffic regulation order expert, but going from our experience of what we've had to do in the city centre, we've had to advertise a specific restriction that includes no waiting behind the back of the curb, and then, as you rightly say, that would need signing separately. So my understanding in terms of the traffic regulation order that has been advertised to date, it wouldn't allow us just to put the signs up. We would have to advertise a separate restriction. It's maybe one for us to consider in terms of monitoring, to see whether anything is needed a little bit further down the line. But yeah, Alex is absolutely right in terms of saying that blue badge users are enabled to park on double yellow lines for a maximum of 3 hours, unless there is a loading and waiting restriction, which I don't think there is in this particular instance. So we're still maintaining loading access to the properties, even though, as Alex rightly says, the recommendation is to take away their ability to park outside their property for the reasons that were included in the report.
Thank you. Colleagues, any further questions or points that you wish to make? Councillor Horner.
Yeah, just picking up the point about parking on grass verges. I mean, so what will stop people doing that in this now? Because they're double yellow lines, but people park on those anyway. If they park on grass verges, it really does, especially with the weather we've been having, churn up the verges completely. It destroys them. So how are we going to stop people from doing that?
I can't sit here and answer that. If I'm brutally honest, Councillor Horner, we do get lots of queries and questions about it. We know that people use their own informal methods, either wooden stakes or stones. But ultimately our default position will have to be that it's an asset owned by managed by Amy. It's obviously part of it's obviously part of the highway, and if they feel it's worth it investing to help reduce the maintenance liability on that location, that's certainly something that they will talk to us about. But we do get a number of queries, but it's not something that we currently have a budget to cover.
Thank you. And I guess, Councillor Horn, I'm also mindful of that kind of government road safety strategy that includes provision for a prohibition of pavement parking in areas where local authorities may well deem that to be necessary. Might be something that we want to explore on an area-by-area basis at some point. And as I understand it, secondary legislation is due on that at some point this year, so we'll get even greater clarity on it, and it might give us more options when it comes to addressing pavement parking, but perhaps even that big long time issue that we have of parking on grass verges. Councillor Merzouch.
Yeah, I fully support these measures, because I think it's really important that everybody can enjoy the grass verges, as well as it being a safety issue. The grass verges are public realm and they're there for everyone to enjoy. And also noticed in your report that this was affecting HGV movement as well. But most importantly, it was affecting people walking and wheeling and their safety. So I fully support the proposals to bring in a TRO. Thank you very much.
And mindful that I see no further questions from colleagues, so I'm just going to go to Councillor Campbell-Pugh, who's indicated that he wishes to say something about this particular item. Councillor Campbell-Pugh.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, not a question, it's just a point that I've had a flood, I think because of the wet weather in particular, I've had a real spike in people contacting me about grass verges, most of whom want them to either be concreted over for parking or to be preserved, or costs as part of the green environment. Half of whom want them to be parked on and half of whom want parking to be prevented on them at all costs. And I just wonder whether we might suggest that the whatever they're called now, street scene committee, could look at this issue and look at if there is an approach that would be able to more successfully manage this issue, because it's a real bugbear for a lot of people across the city. That's my first point. My second point is it's interesting that although, with apologies for having broken some protocol and set something that I hope doesn't become a precedent, it's interesting that in the discussion of the highway scheme for the southwest of the city, we actually had members of the public here that we were able to hear from and refer back to, and we heard a lot of contributions from members of the committee who just happened by happy coincidence to be deeply familiar with the particular sections of the highway in those areas. Whereas in this scheme for the north of the city, we first of all don't have members of the public who are engaged in it here, so we can't hear from them, even though we might not want to, because it's a bit chaotic. And we haven't heard the level of detail of personal experience from members of the committee. And actually, it isn't our job as a policy committee to be familiar with the actual local highways in the areas where we're discussing schemes. And what this leads me on to, Chair, which I can see you're perhaps one step ahead of me and surprised that I mention it, is that I have said over the past 4 years that what we really need to do within our governance on this authority is to find a way of getting decisions about the design detail of local schemes delegated out to the people with the expertise, which is in our governance structure is the local area committees, the ward councillors and the residents and the members of the communities. It's really, really important for us as a policy committee to set the strategy and to say we need to stop people being killed by poor practice on the roads. We need to be prioritising pedestrians and getting an option for people to travel by bike where they can, and not be entirely motor vehicle centric. That is our job as a policy committee. But in terms of the detail of like what happens to you if you turn left here and where the bollard should go on which bit of grass verge, those are things which are best dealt with by the people with the local expertise. And I just make that point because I've made it at every meeting of this committee since it was formed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell-Pugh, for banging the drum about that particular issue. I guess it's one of subsidiarity, isn't it? The decisions should perhaps be made closest to the people who are impacted by them. Of course, you do talk very eloquently about how we as a policy committee set that overall city-wide strategy for many different schemes. And sometimes, of course, it is quite challenging, isn't it, to pinpoint one particular intervention in the highway network as just having an impact on that particular area, because it's all interconnected. But you certainly make a good point that we should certainly follow up with our colleagues on the governance committee. Any other colleague who wishes to make a contribution? I don't see any other colleague who wishes to make a contribution, so therefore we're going to move to the recommendation for approval, if the committee's minded. That's on page number 223 of the agenda pack. Can I ask colleagues whether we're all agreed? Of course, if not, and you wish to dissent, then please do raise your hand. Colleagues, do I see nodding? Are we happy? I see no one who is raising their hands to dissent, so therefore this item, item 10, the Herries Road Pedestrian Crossing Improvement Scheme, has been approved. Alex and David, thank you very much for bringing this item today and working with the local community in order to make sure it's a reality. Item number 8 on our original agenda now is something that we are considering. It's on page 39 of the agenda pack, and it's Stocksbridge Towns Fund Programme Update. I'm just going to turn to Robert for clarification on something that we said at the very head of the meeting. Robert, we were just reflecting to some guidance for Councillor Vidler, who is on the Stocksbridge Towns Fund Board, and whether she needs to make a declaration of interest or not.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Riddler's made the declaration. There's no objection to participating in the debate or indeed the decision, provided, of course, that she's able to consider it on the merits of the report before her in the debate. Chair.
Thank you very much, and that guidance will no doubt be warmly received by Councillor Vidler. Colleagues, we have got this particular item, which is on page 39 of your agenda pack. It's the Stocksbridge Towns Fund programme update, and Adam is going to be presenting it to us. Adam, thank you so much for stepping in. I appreciate that you weren't meant to be presenting this today and have probably done it at the very last minute, so we really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, yes, I'm standing in for Michelle, the programme manager, who's unfortunately unwell today. So, that being said, if there are any detailed questions, I might need to take those away and come back with an answer afterwards. So, it's an update on the Stocksbridge Towns Fund programme. The programme is funded £24 million through Towns Fund and currently a £3 million Simca Gain Share contribution as well. And it's the programme's making strong progress, despite significant inflationary pressures, which were well rehearsed on previous projects. And we are also requesting additional gain share to safeguard future delivery of the programme. So I'll just give a brief update on some of the projects within the programme. So the flagship community hub building on Manchester Road, that's now under construction following land acquisition and demolition. And that will deliver a new library, cafe, community space and education facilities, and that's expected to be open in spring next year. The shopfront improvement scheme now has planning consent, and we're just about to award a contract to a contractor to begin work on that project. We're showing strong interest from shop owners and leaseholders, with an initial early take-up of 3 adjacent units, and delivery will then proceed in phases subject to commitment from shop owners and signing of legal agreements. The placemaking programme that focuses on acquiring and demolishing the former Bargain Booze building to create new public realm that will link the hub with the co-op and the rest of the high street. There's a transport project, the Hopper Bus, which launched last year in July. Although initial patronage on that is low, we're working with Simca to secure a sustainable operating model for that. We've got the sports and leisure projects are either largely complete or progressing well. This includes the all-wheels park, upgrades for Parksteel's Football Club and Stocksbridge Rugby Club, and also a community-led delivery of a new 3G pitch and cricket pavilion at Brackenmore. The tracks and trails element of the programme is now targeting smaller, more deliverable improvements such as wayfinding and safer crossings, and we're doing some feasibility studies for future projects as well. And then there's an education and skill support project which is underway with Pathways to Work programme helping residents into employment. And finally, the board is looking and exploring options to manage local assets in the long term when the programme is completed. So in summary, the programme remains on track. It's subject to managing cost pressures, obviously, and today's report asks members to note progress, ratify the STF board's decisions and support the additional gain share required to complete the programme.
Thank you very much, Adam, for taking us through that report. I'm just going to turn, I think, to Councillor Riddler if she wished to make a contribution on the basis that she's a member of the Stocksbridge Townsend Board and this is in her ward as well. I guess it's customary for us to turn to colleagues in those particular wards on occasions like this if they are members of the committee. And then we'll go to Councillor Shaw. Councillor Riddler.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report. Yeah, I've been on the board now as the local councillor for just coming up to 6 months, so I've really had a chance to see that the hard work that's gone into it from officers, from the board, from the co-chairs, Marie Tidball and Yuri Matishan, and I think that, as you've said, that, and obviously there have been these cost pressures that have happened over time, inflation. I think we're all familiar with the effects of that, but one thing that I have noted, Joe, is that there really has been progress made recently. Without repeating all the list of achievements that you've said, some of them have really made a significant impact. The Hopper bus, for example, Bolsterstone, we've not had a local bus service there for over 10 years, and that is now connecting Bolsterstone back with Stocksbridge and Deepcar again, which has been absolutely game changer for people that live around there. So really making a fantastic impact together with all the other things that you've seen. So I think now that it's becoming, a reality and people are seeing what's happening, it is a community-based project. People in Stocksbridge are very proud of where they live. The town centre did need a revamp. And this has been a really welcome investment in the community to help regenerate and make the town a place for people to be proud of. So, I'd just record my thanks to everybody who's been involved in it. It's been a very exciting ongoing project for me, and I think everybody else who's on that board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Riddler, for sharing your reflections and hard work on that particular project. I've got Councillor Shaw and then Councillor Diamond. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming and presenting the report. Regarding the Hopper bus, in the report it says the operating costs are 10% higher than anticipated. Could you give us any kind of information about why that is? I mean, 10% is quite a difference.
Yeah, that is one of the questions that I will have to take away and get an answer to, unfortunately. Yeah.
Absolutely, and Adam, we're mindful that you stepped in at the very last minute to present this particular piece, and we're very grateful. So no doubt we will get back to Councillor Shaw on that particular issue, which is a very valid question. Councillor Diamond, I think you're next on the list.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for coming in at short notice. We probably appreciate that you might not be able to answer the other questions as well. Did have another question on the Hopper bus in terms of what can be done to support uptake, because that has been also lower than expected. But yeah, there's some really, really positive things that are happening. Specifically, the Stocksbridge Community Hub building is that's going to be a brilliant asset to the community. And I'm also really interested to hear that the council is looking at like the community operating models. I wondered if they had plans for or suggestions for how they're going to generate revenue to support that ongoing. And also the Stocksbridge Community Legacy Vehicle is a interesting proposition as well. I suppose that there's lots of positives around sports and employment and the community aspects, but the transport aspects are sort of less successful, mainly to do with budget constraints. So, the off-road trails have been cancelled, and so there's a significant reduction in scope and ambition for active travel, and also the funicular was cancelled as well. So I'm just wondering, are there any other plans aside from the grant funding that has been secured by the Upper Don Trail Trust to support active travel, or as a replacement for the funicular?
Thank you, Councillor Diamond. I'll just turn to Sean McLean, our Director of Regen and Development, in a second. But I would say to that particular point, whilst there's no funicular in Stocksbridge, there's a whole raft of projects here that are listed in the recommendation that we should all be really, really excited about. And perhaps some, pie in the sky idea about a funicular railway is not something on the agenda now, but so much more is being delivered. Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. To pick up on the hopper bus question, really, the Towns Fund Board this week did have a briefing from our transport colleagues around the work that's been done around that. So I think what's probably the best way forward is to schedule that for a TRC, the next TRC knowledge briefing. I'll come and share with all of the committee the work that is being doing both across Capital Delivery Service on the project and with transport colleagues as well. And I think just pick up on Councillor Downers' point. I mean, the funicular was something that was in the original Towns Fund bid, but it soon dropped away when costs were finally realised, and the board had to do some prioritisation. So I think the board are now working with Upper Don Trails Trust with a lower amount to look at what the schemes they can bring forward, and we're working with them to look at how we can bring those forward. So it's not that the funding's been cancelled, it's just as a result of some of the inflation issues, the board has had to prioritise some of the changes that they've needed to make, but they are working with all stakeholders and to look at what other additional funding can also be brought in to supplement some of the work of the Towns Fund Board as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. And you asked, I think, the meeting whether we were content perhaps with having a knowledge briefing on that specific issue of the Stocksbridge hopper bus. And as you were speaking, I could see that colleagues were nodding, so we'll certainly add that as part of our knowledge briefing agendas. Just for those people who are watching at home, obviously we have these meetings, but outside these meetings, in order to help develop policy, we also have knowledge briefings where we hear much more detailed information about specific issues that help us to develop policy alongside officers. Adam, I'll just turn for you for any reflections that you might have, and then I'll just go to another colleague.
No, just on the upper bus, yeah, we're working closely with Simca as well to see if there's ways that we can promote use of that. And then just to reiterate what Sean says, we've been working with the Stocksbridge Towns Fund Board over the past 5 years, and the programme, the initial programme has moved on as individual projects have developed. And some have become more feasible, and some others less feasible. So, and this programme that we've got now is probably the sort of near to the final version.
Thank you very much, Adam. Colleagues, I can see Councillor Diamond.
I just would request that we're kept updated about any developments on the Stocksbridge Community Legacy Vehicle and how that develops, because it's interesting for other areas of the city as well.
So the microphone wasn't very clear. It may well be my fault, but could you just repeat that again, Councillor Diamond?
So on page 52, it's talking about the possibility of setting up a community legacy vehicle to manage some of the assets there in Stocksbridge. And it'll be really interesting to be kept informed about and updated about that.
Absolutely, and we'll certainly have future knowledge briefings on this particular item. Obviously, the project is led by the Stocksbridge Towns Fund Board, which is the right thing to do. It's part of that kind of funding arrangement, but it also ensures that it's led by members of the community there. But also we do get timely briefings on things, and I guess as we move on to that kind of latter stage of the project, then we think very much about kind of how are these facilities going to be run, then that has to be part of it. So we'll certainly make sure that that's part of our knowledge briefing programme. Colleagues, any other questions that we have or comments? I'm not seeing any indication. Councillor Vidler, thank you so much for your work on the Stocksbridge Townsend Board, and I guess we should also thank that Stocksbridge Townsend Board for their work on these projects that are facilitated by Adam and Sean and their team in Regen. Colleagues, let's therefore move to the recommendations that are part of the agenda pack. That's on page 41 of the agenda. And I'm just going to ask colleagues whether you are content with agreeing the recommendations as outlined. If not, then could you please raise your hand in dissent? I'm seeing some colleagues nodding. In fact, I'm seeing most colleagues nodding and no dissent. So therefore, we will approve the recommendations that are outlined in item 8. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for Adam for presenting this, and Sean also. That's therefore concludes that particular item, and we'll move on to item number 11, which is an opportunity for us to consider traffic volume, speed, active travel and parking surveys, commissioning work and a decision on that. It's on page 249 of the agenda pack. It's a very, very long title, but for an important piece of work, isn't it, Paul? And Paul is going to run the committee through it. Outside this room, we're very appreciative, Paul, of the briefing that you've given to us in the run-up to this as well. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. It's a long title, but hopefully it's a short report and a short presentation. So I'm here to Paul Sullivan, Principal Transport Planner, so my tag's out of date. I need to address that. So the report in front of you is basically seeking approval to set up a framework contract for us to appoint a number of suppliers to undertake various traffic and travel surveys, including motor vehicles, volume and speed, cycling, pedestrian and parking surveys. So why are we doing this now? As many of the committee would be aware that since about 2019 we've had we've seen a significant increase in our levels of funding for transport schemes in the city, obviously then that leads on to a significant number of schemes that need to be progressed. The vast majority, if not all of those schemes, need data to determine what they look like and how they work. And furthermore, we also need to establish sort of baseline data to monitor those particular schemes. So the report sets out roughly how much we've spent, approximately how much we've spent in the 2-year period from March 23 to March 25, which is a tune of about £550,000. Funding levels are set to remain high through to 2032, so we thought we'd take this opportunity to try and tidy up this element of the scheme work. So increase in funding. So the second point why we're bringing this forward now is because obviously that value is significant, 560,000. We only tend to get 2, maybe 3 interested parties, because it's a lot of work for them every time they have to submit a quote. They're going through the whole DPIA process. Admittedly, they will rehash some of their quotes, but the DPIA process they have to go through every particular scheme. So this creates a bit of a delay, and also, we're well over procurement thresholds, so we need to address that. And then the third element, which is sort of related to that, is the amount of time and resource that we're having to put in to run these quotes, assess these quotes. It's not just an issue for us in transport, it's also colleagues in information management and information in procurement. So what we're requesting is to set up this framework with approximately 4 suppliers. We feel we may get more suppliers if they're only having to do that groundwork once for a period of time. Set up a framework with an approximate value of about 1.5 million. That's based on what we've spent over the last 2 years to run for 4 years. We feel that running a competitive tender process will meet procurement guidelines and and be legally sound. It will reduce the amount of resource that we are spending assessing these quotes, and it will be a resource saving as well for the supplier. Though they have indicated, we did do some market testing on this, they have indicated that there'll probably be no financial saving, but obviously we will make a saving in time and be able to divert that time onto other subject matters. So that is pretty much it. So we're seeking approval to establish a framework. To do that, we have to go to a competitive tender process. We think we'll spend £1.5 million roughly. We've got a bit of wiggle room on that of around 10%. We know funding levels are going to remain fairly similar to what they are now to 2032. So I mean, there's that old phrase about what's the best time to do something. If it was 20 years ago or 5 years ago, in this case, the second best time is now. So it will be an enormous benefit for us at the council if we go down this particular route. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Colleagues, I'm mindful that we have been briefed on this beforehand, but this is now an opportunity to ask any questions that you might well have on this. I'll go to Councillor Horner and then Councillor Shaw and then Councillor Diamond. Councillor Horner.
I think, yeah, we've been briefed on it a few times, but just for benefit of the public, how wide are these, across the city, are these surveys going to be? Because obviously representing the southeast of the city, I think general public perception is the council spends an awful lot of money in the city centre and other parts, and the southeast gets very little. So, you know, are these surveys going to be widespread across the city, or are they current? Is there a current clear programme? That's, you know, not that I'm asking for my benefit, but for the public listening in.
Thank you. And shall I just very quickly just go to Councillor Shaw, and then we'll just get some reflections. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul, for the report. So, includes in the summary, it talks about surveys relating to like active travel, cycling, like pedestrians. So, does this replace or complement the existing counters that we have across the city that count number of journeys along like Sheaf Valley route for instance, or is that separate from this framework?
That will be separate. We use automatic counters to try and establish some baseline data where we know we're going to build, but they do have their limitations. And obviously we're talking about a lot of surveys, and automatic counters are not cheap. So we are fairly frugal on where we put them. We try and sort of cover multiple routes with where they're positioned. So no, it won't replace the automatic counters. It will give us a level of baseline data for all modes, which project teams should then use to monitor against, but we encourage the project teams to look at automatic counters. But no, you really need that sort of snapshot in time, and one survey can pick up an awful lot of information, different modes, but the bottom line is no, they won't replace. We will still look to roll out some automatic counters on top of this. In answer to the question, all the surveys, whatever they be, will be linked to where the schemes are going to take place. And I believe, the programme for 27 to 32 is yet to be set. Obviously, the committee will determine where we invest that additional funding. So that will be where the surveys take place. Surveys basically linked to schemes.
Thank you. And Councillor Diamond.
Thank you very much, Paul, for the presentation. I think it's really interesting that we think we'll get potentially more suppliers from this approach due to being less onerous to respond to one tender versus lots of individual tenders. I think reflecting what you said before, I think reducing office time is a financial saving as well. But could you give us some examples of some of the suppliers we've procured in recent years and who we do expect to respond to the tender? And is it envisioned that this will actually enable more monitoring of things like desire lines, near misses that we were discussing earlier on?
So over the last few years, we've had two regular suppliers and one occasional. They are all national, but they're regional offices. So at least two of them, Nationwide and Traxis, are very familiar with Sheffield, so they know how it works and what they need to do. And they also have to not only work with us, they have to work with information management, but they also have to work with network management. So we're quite confident in those three we'll bid. We feel maybe it'll be attractive to some of the more national companies without regional offices, but only time will tell on that one. So what the second part was?
Councillor Diamond, would you just press your button on your microphone?
Sorry. No, I was just wondering if this is going to enable more monitoring of things like desire lines, near misses, or to inform our transport schemes.
Potentially, yes. We try and do a bit more than the basic when we're determining, where we want to survey and what we want to survey. Sometimes we will have to do repeat exercises. But yeah, I don't see why this couldn't be used for other types of survey, whether that's ANPR or, as you say, sort of desire lines.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Paul. Colleagues, I don't see anyone else indicating to make a contribution, so therefore we're going to focus on the recommendations for consideration. They're on page 250 of your agenda pack. Colleagues, can I ask whether we are all agreed? Obviously, if we're not, then please can I ask that you show your hand. Raise your hand. I'm seeing that colleagues are nodding in approval. There's no one that is dissenting from that, so we therefore have approved that particular item, which is item number 11 on traffic, volume, speed, active travel and parking surveys, and it's a commissioning decision to allow officers to go away and do that important piece of work that then helps us deliver on important schemes across the city. Paul, thank you very much for bringing that. It's really appreciated, and hopefully that's very helpful. That then takes us to item number 12, which is an opportunity for us to consider the Parkwood Regeneration Scheme. It's about the approval to establish costs for a relocation scheme to facilitate a new access road, which is crucial for the redevelopment of that site. Members will know it as the former ski slope, or the former ski village on Parkwood Springs. And as I understand it, that may well be coming back with our new potential operator, Skyline, that's a New Zealand operator. I'm also mindful of what we said at the very start of the meeting, where we did say that this particular item on the agenda does have some exempt information in it related to financial and business affairs. If colleagues wish to discuss that particular piece of exempt information, then we would need to go into closed session. So if you feel that you need to, then please do say that in advance. I'll just welcome to the meeting David and Alan, who are going to run us through this particular item. David and Alan, thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Alan Seasman, I'm the head of Regeneration, and I'll let David introduce himself, and David will run us through the report. Hi, Chair. My name's David Ambrose. I'm a senior surveyor in the Regeneration team working under Alan. This report regarding, as you said, Parkwood. The regeneration of a park group requires a new road to be created. Land owned by a business is required to deliver this new road, and the owner has agreed in principle to sell his land to the council in return for us relocating his business to a new site at our cost. In order to establish this relocation budget, we need to enter into agreement with the owner of the potential relocation site, which is in Sheffield, to take that site off the market and design a new industrial unit to tender stage and cost that development, and also to enter into agreement with the business to indemnify him for costs associated in working up a budget to relocate his business. Full details are set out in the closed appendix of this report. I'd like to add the budget for these costs has been approved by Finance and Performance Committee on the 15th of December last year. The result of these works by the owner and the business will enable officers to establish the full cost of the relocation and to come back to committee for approval for that budget and authority to enter into the necessary agreements to deliver the relocation. I think if you've got any questions.
Thank you, David, for running us through that. Of course, this has been subject to briefings beforehand, but colleagues are more than welcome to ask questions or make points about this or the wider regeneration of the Parkwood Springs site. I think it's probably also important to highlight that the redevelopment of this wider site is led by an area board, the Parkwood Area Board, that's led by the local MP and members of the community and different stakeholders groups, in a similar way that the regeneration in Stocksbridge that we heard about before is also led by a board specifically of different stakeholders and members of the community. And today is an opportunity for us to consider these recommendations. Colleagues, any particular questions or points about this item? Don't see any colleagues wishing to ask a question. That must mean, David and Alan, that you briefed us really well before the meeting, so thank you very much. Anyone wishes to kind of make any further points on this item? No, so therefore we will move to consider the item, which is on page 257 in terms of the recommendations for approval. Can I ask colleagues, are we all agreed? If you wish to dissent, then please do raise your hand. I can see that colleagues are nodding, there's no dissent, so therefore we have approved the recommendations as outlined in that report on 257. Thank you very much, David and Alan, for bringing it to us today and sitting so patiently throughout the rest of the proceedings. That then takes us to the next item of our agenda, which is going a little bit backwards in terms of our original agenda, but it's item 7 on the original agenda, and it's our work programme. It's on page 29 of the agenda pack, and Amanda, is there anything that we need to spotlight for committee members?
No changes, Chair, since the publication of the work programme.
Thank you very much, Amanda. That's very much appreciated. Colleagues, any particular points to raise about the work programme? I've got 2 points. I'll go for Councillor Diamond and then Councillor Campbell-Pugh. Councillor Diamond.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a few things. So we had a knowledge briefing earlier in the week, was it this week? So that we would add a waterways conservation area to the work plan, but with a caveat that would be after 2027. So if we could add that to the work plan. I also had a query about the annual climate report. I think the last time it was 2024. So we're getting one for 2025. Is that correct? And when we expect that? And then I don't know if there'd be anyone left to answer this question, but if we know when if we're still expecting the Sheffield e-bike hire scheme and the parking plan to come forward before the end of the municipal year.
Thank you very much. They may well be items that we have to take back for further clarification. I think you mentioned taking it in reverse order, one particularly about the e-bike hire scheme. From memory, I'm not entirely sure whether that needs to be brought back to this committee for approval. I don't think it probably does need to, but we'll certainly get you an answer on that one. I think you also mentioned the need that came out of a knowledge briefing about the conservation area and whether that should be widened to add something to our work programme. I think probably because of the publication dates for papers for this meeting, it hasn't filtered through yet, but of course we'll have to be mindful that it needs to filter through. I think the decision as proposed by you in that knowledge briefing was that whilst we didn't have a date per se for that, and it wasn't the right thing to do to put a date in at the moment, we were mindful, weren't we, Councillor Diamond, that this committee or the composition of this committee changes each municipal year, and we wanted to make sure that it would outlast us if we weren't on this committee, for example. So we'll make sure that's the case. And is there anything that I perhaps missed out there, Councillor Diamond?
Just the date for the parking plan and whether we would be getting an annual climate report.
I think we've been, I think we've been shared emails about the parking and curbside strategy to say that it is still in development, and due to kind of constraints on staff availability and resources, we don't yet have a date on that, but it's something that I know every member of this committee is really keen to see progressed. Obviously, we appreciate that staff time is limited at the moment, particularly when it comes to kind of recruitment challenges that the council faces when it comes to the budgetary situation. Will, I'll just let you step in, see if there's any further clarity you might be able to add to any of those things.
I think you've covered it, Chair. Just on the annual climate statement, that is something that we're committed to. I will make sure that we update the committee on when we can expect that statement. This committee has discussed on a number of occasions how we best report data, and I think took the decision that we needed to streamline the climate committee data reporting. So I'll come back with that. Just on the curbside strategy or the parking strategy, that is due to be the next kind of delivery plan underneath the transport vision. So as you rightly say, that is next one up on the agenda.
Thank you for adding clarity there, Will. I can see that Councillor Diamond Pugh was indicating to speak. Councillor Campbell Pugh? Diamond Pugh? My gosh, we've got married. There's been a union. I think actually Councillor Campbell Pugh's already married as well, so yeah.
A lot can happen in one short meeting. I would like to make my second perennial repetitive point that I make at all of these meetings in relation to the work plan, which is that we are a Transport, Regeneration and Climate Committee. It is good to see that there are a smattering of climate-related things in the rest of the work plan. It's really bitterly disappointing that there hasn't really been anything that's had climate at its centre today on today's agenda. I think we really need to look at what we can do to get that in balance. We've declared a climate emergency. We've set a target to achieve net zero by 2030, which is hurtling towards us. The world is sort of burning and flooding in equal parts, and I just think it's something that I do keep saying. I'm kind of gently mocking the fact that I'm saying it in a repetitive way, but the serious point is that we do need to be working out, if we're not able to bring these items forward for discussion so that we've got a balance on our agenda, then we need to be looking at in a bit more strategic detail, Chair, through strategy and resources, why do we not have the officer? Is that because we don't have the officer time? I'm certain it can't possibly because we don't have the political will and resolve to tackle it. Maybe we need to push harder and faster on exercising our political resolve to bring climate matters further up our agenda in a more timely way. And would it be possible to have this point minuted in the discussion of the work plan, Chair? Because I'm concerned it's not always captured. Thank you.
Of course, and you do consistently make this point, and it's right that you do so, and we'll certainly, as with all contributions, make sure that it is minuted. As you were speaking, I could see many other members who were nodding on in agreement about this particular issue. I think it's probably important to say that whilst we oversee, I guess, the work of the sustainability team as part of city sustainability, then this is a whole council approach, isn't it, and a whole city approach. We've done some great work, haven't we, more recently? We've recently launched a climate bond, and just in a few weeks we've managed to achieve over £1 million worth of investment. That's bringing together different groups of people from throughout our city and elsewhere in order to invest in some great climate-related projects, but there's much more work to do. And as Councillor Campbell-Pugh said, we'll make sure that those comments are certainly noted, and it's something that this committee needs to be certainly very mindful of. Colleagues, if you're content, therefore, with approving the work programme, of course it's a document that will evolve and is subject to amendment from each meeting, from one meeting to the next. Then can I see that you are content by simply nodding along and telling me that you are, or raising a hand to say that you're not? I I can see that the colleagues are nodding, they're content with approving the work programme. I see no one raising their hands to dissent. So therefore we have approved our work programme, and Amanda, thanks very much for putting that together. That does therefore conclude the items on our agenda. Councillor Campbell-Pugh said to me at the start of the meeting, is this our last one? It isn't. Our next one is on the 18th of March, and it's at 10 a.m. I'm not sure whether I prefer morning meetings or afternoon meetings, but it's in the morning. So I will look forward to seeing you there on the 18th of March. Thank you.